Hello, happy Monday. Welcome to another weekly reading vlog. I feel like it's been ages since I said that. I don't think it has been that long since I've said it, but I've been doing shorter vlogs at the moment. I've just kind of balanced doing weekly reading vlogs with also doing some shorter vlogs and just kind of mixing up, which I'm really enjoying doing. But it is October, we're into Spoopathon, it's autumnal season, it's spooky season, and I'm going to be doing weekly reading vlogs for the whole of October. I'm calling them weekly. They will be released weekly and they will be as close to a week as I can film, but this week will be Monday to Thursday because I have some stuff happening over a long weekend this weekend that will be a whole other video. So this weekend I will be filming something else, so next week, that vlog will also not be a full week. So basically there's 2 weeks of not full weeks and then we're back to full weeks. It makes sense in my head, but anyway, it is the start of Spoopathon. I did a 48-hour readathon over the weekend for the 1st and 2nd of October with my patrons to welcome in Spoopathon. I managed to read 2 books, or finish 2 books, and get halfway through a third, so I feel like that was a really good start for me. I've definitely been super slumpy at the moment, so I really needed to be able to kick myself out of that, and I think I've been able to do it. I really enjoyed the books that I read for that readathon, so if you would like to watch the vlog and find out my thoughts on those books, I'll pop a link up here. But for now, I'm going to be continuing on with The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is a fantasy contemporary romance. I am about, well, I was going to say halfway through, but I'm over halfway through. I was about halfway through yesterday, and this was the book that I ended the readathon on, so I'm just basically continuing where I left off, really. I have sprints happening tonight, so I'm hoping to be able to finish this tonight with my patrons. I'm not enamored with it. It's fine. It's kind of fun, but also at the same time, I don't really overly get on with this genre of books anyway. It does feel like a fun Disney-esque movie, like kind of the stuff you'd see on the Disney Channel in the mid-noughties, I would say, is the kind of vibe that it's giving me. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because there was some solid films at that point. It's just giving me that kind of vibe, but in adult format, because there's certainly some very adult moments in this. So yeah, I don't know how I'm feeling about it yet. I feel like I need to finish it to properly say. I quite like the characters. I enjoy the sexual tension that's between them, and I like reading about that. I like seeing from each of their perspectives. The magic I feel like I want a bit more of, and I'm more here for the fantasy than I am the romance. However, it is a fantasy romance, so I think I do have to acknowledge that, but definitely not my normal genre. However, I had heard some really good things about it. I feel like at the moment it's sitting at a solid 3.5 stars. It really isn't a huge like or dislike for me. It's a very average at the moment, so we'll see how it continues. I'm, as I said, hoping to finish it tonight. Now, I've been putting off filming the intro for this vlog because I didn't know what book I wanted to read next, and I wanted to be able to give you like a rough TBR for the week. However, I still don't know what book to read next, so I think I'm just going to finish this, and then maybe if I'm still on the Patreon Live at the time, get my patrons to help me pick. I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I am really excited about my reading for this month. I feel like there's so many books I want to get to. I don't want to get like overwhelmed with the amount I can pick from, but I just want to be able to let myself just pick the ones that I fancy. I've not done a fictionary TBR for this month. I'm just picking the spooky or spoopy or just generally fantasy witchy type of books that I fancy reading. Gonna go on a walk soon because I have been sat at my desk for far too long today. It is after work now, but I've just literally been sat here like not doing anything but sitting here and working all day. I just really need to get out and stretch my legs, come back, make some dinner, and then head on to Patreon sprints. I have finished The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. It is now Tuesday. I finished this last night on Patreon sprints. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think pretty much everything I said yesterday is still my feelings today. I didn't hate it by any means. It's not a genre I love all that much. The contemporary romance isn't really my go-to unless I am feeling in a particular mood for it, or apparently the off-campus series when I'm feeling slumpy. I did like the fantasy elements of this. I enjoyed that kind of fun, playful way that the magic system was involved. I didn't hate the romance, I didn't hate the characters, I felt meh about it. I never find that these kind of books give me a big pull. There isn't anything I feel makes me feel very excited or makes me feel very intrigued. I'm just kind of following the story along. And for me, that isn't what I want from my reading experience. I want to not be able to stop thinking about the book. I want to be like absolutely obsessed with it and like completely entranced whenever I pick it up. And whilst I did find this was very easy to pick up and get into, I just didn't have that big pull with it. So I liked it, I didn't dislike it. It was an easy 3 out of 5 stars. So I was trying to pick my next book and I was deciding between a couple of the horrors that I have on my shelf, because obviously October, Spoopathon, I want to get to those kind of books. And I ended up going for My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is an interesting novel because it kind of picks apart the slasher genre of films. We have a main character who is really, really interested in slasher films and kind of cult horror films, and we kind of meet her in the middle of her story almost. There's been some stuff prior to the book starting that has happened to her that we're not getting the full details on yet, but she seems to be quite isolated. She doesn't have a group of friends. There's quite a lot of anger in her as well, which I think fair enough when you kind of get to know more of her situation. And she generally doesn't really fit in with this town. There's something strange going on in this town, and our main character, because of her knowledge of horror films and this kind of deep passion she has for them, she's using that to kind of notice that things aren't quite right and that there are some strange things going on in this town and that maybe she needs to do something about that. The reviews, I think, are the things that really sold me for this book. They say a homage to slasher films that also manages to defy and transcend genre, an easy contender for best of the year. It left me stunned and applauding. I really like the sound of it from these reviews. A fantastic gory whodunit mystery with an ending both savage and shocking. I think it's going to be really good. I am literally only 40 or so, 45 pages in at the moment. So far, we're just kind of getting to know the character, but also not getting to know the character. Like, there's a lot I feel like I want to know about her and how she's got to the point that she is at the moment. She definitely has a very strong personality, and I really like characters that have that because I feel like they're much more compelling to follow. So I will let you know my thoughts as I get further into this. I'm hoping I can finish this by Thursday. I don't know if that's too ambitious because I don't feel like I'm fully into it to get the pacing for it yet, but I am going to be doing something on Friday that requires me to be reading a different book, so I would like to finish this by then. I don't really want to have to put pause on it. I don't really like doing that if I can avoid it, but I will let you know my thoughts as I read a little bit more. Good evening. This is my first time updating the vlog today, but I have big reading updates because I have pretty much nearly finished My Heart as a Chainsaw. So I hosted Spoopathon sprints today with Jade. We're going from 1 until about 6, so I did a lot of reading during that time via audiobook. So basically I decided I was going to clear out all of my clothes, all of my cupboards with things under my bed area, and just sort everything out and try and get a little bit more space there. So that took me pretty much every time on sprints. So I was listening to the audiobook for this throughout that whole time. So I'm very, 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 very nearly finished with this book. Am I enjoying this? I honestly don't know. I feel like my expectations haven't quite been met. I have enjoyed the references to the cult horror films, and I like the fact that we have the kind of horror tropes in this and the element of how the final girl stuff comes into it as well, and just generally like all the talk of slasher films and stuff. I think that there is a lot more to it than meets the eye, and there is also the description that I gave yesterday for it, I feel like, or the day before, whenever that was, the description I gave initially for it, I feel like wasn't really that great of a description, to be honest. I feel like it's not really like doing it justice as to what I said it was about, really, which was my indication from the blurb. So I think going into it now, it's quite a different book than what I expected, not necessarily in a bad way, but my biggest issue with it is that I can't follow the plot properly. I am really, really trying, and I've been physically reading it alongside the audiobook, been just doing the audio, just physically reading, and I don't know why, but the plot is not staying in my head, and I feel like it's just being really jumpy and like isn't really very easy to follow, and I don't know if that's just me or if anyone else has had this. If you have read this book, please let me know. I have heard people loving and hating it now, or talking about it on sprints. There seems to be quite a split, but yeah, I don't know why. I'm just kind of struggling to really follow what's happening in it. It's always really frustrating because obviously that means I feel like I'm not as invested in it as well as I could be. So just generally, I don't know, it's just letting me down a little bit, unfortunately. I do find it interesting, and it's certainly very different, and I really like that aspect. We are following a character who is very interesting to read about. She is not your typical main character, and I think that that is probably why I'm still reading this, because I'm finding that her narrative and the way that she has this kind of knowledge of these slasher films and her passions and also like what she wants to happen in her town makes her a very interesting, incredibly morally grey main character, which is something that I do enjoy reading about, so I like that aspect of it. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't really feel like it's going to change massively unless the ending really shocks me. I don't know if it will, but it's just, I think reading the review that said it's a contender for best of the year, I was really, really hoping that I would finish it thinking, oh my god. And it certainly is sticking with me. It's certainly different. It certainly has some really interesting aspects and approaches to the genre. But I think if it wasn't for that, the kind of way that I feel the narrative's quite jumpy and harder to follow, I think I probably would be enjoying it more, but unfortunately, yeah, that is the part that's laying it down for me. I did say I wanted to finish it by tomorrow, and I think that, well, I definitely am on track. I think I've got about an hour and something left in the audiobook, so I will definitely be finishing it by tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to pick to read next, because I have a book, I'm doing something over the weekend that will be a whole other video that I'm going to be reading a specific book for, but I also want to have another book as well before I start that book, so like I'm kind of balancing reading two at once almost, and I don't know what that other book is going to be, but I will let you know what I pick if I finish this within this vlog. But so far I do feel like I'm off to a good start with this month. I mean, this will be book number 4 of the month, yeah, book number 4 for Spoopathon, and we're only 5 or 6 days in. I don't know what the date is, 6 days in, but it will be my 4th book finish of the month so far. I feel like I'm on a roll with the horror books, so I definitely want to continue that theme of things. I do need to read Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid soon, because there is an event that I'm going to for that in a couple of weeks, so I do need to have read that one, but it's not really fitting the vibe that I'm going for at the moment for Spoopathon, but I definitely want to have read it before the event, so I do need to squish that one in there somewhere as well. It's not the vibe, but I do want to read it, and I am excited to read it. I really do enjoy Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing style. So I will let you know what I pick. It's not going to be Carrie Soto is Back for this week. I definitely want to keep the horror theme running, but yeah, I'll let you know what book I pick to read next and my final thoughts on this when I finish it tomorrow. Okay, so I ended up finishing this book tonight. I've given it 3 out of 5 stars because it's one of those ones where I can see that it's not that it's badly written by any means. I think maybe if I'd have had a bit more knowledge of all of the slasher films referenced, because I had seen some of the films but not all of the films, I think if I'd have had more of a knowledge of that, because it's very, very much ingrained in a knowledge of those films, maybe I would have followed it a bit more. But honestly, no matter how hard I concentrated on this book, it just let me down on the plot being like completely all over the place for me. I just felt like it was so erratic, and I think to a certain extent that definitely reflected the main character, but it made it really difficult from a reading perspective to just feel like I was able to get absorbed into it. I did read it quite quickly, so in that sense, like, it was addictive and I did want to know what was happening, but yeah, it didn't grab me, but I can see that it was a well-written book. It just wasn't one for me. So yeah, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, and I now have to pick my next book to read. So I did pick up Grady Hendrix' The Final Girls Support Club, which I think I might possibly go for next. Oh my god, I'm going to cause a book avalanche. No, it's okay. I might go for this one next, although I don't know if it's going to be too similar in terms of the slasher references and the final girl element, which I did enjoy the final girl element of My Heart is a Chainsaw. I think that was one of my favourite elements of it, and the way that that was played with. So I did like that aspect of it. I don't know if this one's going to be too similar and they'll kind of blur together if I need to like read a book in between to break them up. I don't know. This one's definitely in contention to be read next. Also, Eeny Meeny looks quite good, and The Nesting. The Nesting, it literally says on it, don't read it with the lights off. I mean, I wouldn't read it with the lights off because I wouldn't be able to see the words on the pages, but I understand the sentiment, and it's definitely one that I think is going to creep me out. So maybe one of these two, maybe The Haunting of Hill House as well. I don't know, I've got so many choices. I feel like, honestly, I am still living on the high of this book because this was fantastic. Like, really, really, really good. And I think this is almost unlocking a new type of genre of book that I am enjoying and now want to find more of. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. I know there's another one by this author that I have added to my wish list. I was just watching Cody's Horror Haul, and now I've added a load of new books to my wish list, including the new Catriona Ward book. So yeah, maybe one of these two. I don't know. I feel like I need more horror books to choose from, but at the same time, like, this is a fairly decent selection. Excluding this one. This one, I don't know why it's on the shelf. It's not a horror book. It's just somehow managed to find its way into the shelf. But yeah, these are kind of the ones that I will decide between. I might have a flick through them all and then pick. Another quick additional thing about this book, I would definitely say if you are somebody that's considering reading this, consider having a look at the trigger warnings, because this definitely has quite a few things in it, including an abusive parental relationship. So just check over those before picking it up if you are interested in reading it. Okay, everything's a little bit of a mess around me right now because I'm actually packing, because I am going on a trip tomorrow. I'm going to be making a vlog for the whole thing. I'll be talking about it on my Instagram. If you do want to check out what that trip is, do hit subscribe so you can be notified of when I post up that vlog very, very soon. Really excited. It just means today is a little bit manic. It's a normal working day for me, but I'm just kind of packing after work, before work. It's been a busy day, but I wanted to come in with my final reading update for this vlog. So yesterday I kind of had a choice between books to read. Now I decided I would read the first chapter of each book and then decide from there. Except I ended up reading the first chapter of Grady Hendrix, the Final Girl Support Group, and then just ended up reading the first 50 pages, so I guess this is what I'm reading next. My worry was that this would be too similar to My Heart as a Chainsaw, or like, not necessarily similar in what the plot was, but similar in the kind of the tropes and the setting and the slasher-esque nature of it, so I didn't want to overlap the two in my head. However, having now started this one, I don't think there's a risk of this. This is much more psychological, thrillery kind of vibes to it than it is the horror slasher vibes that My Heart as a Chainsaw had. I'm really liking this one so far. I was very dubious because when I bought it, the bookseller said that they didn't enjoy this one as much because it didn't have the same supernatural elements that Grady Hendrix' other books have. However, I'm liking it so far. I think going into it knowing that is helpful. I didn't expect it to have those elements anyway, but I am liking it. I'm intrigued to keep going with it, bringing this with me for my weekend away, but also bringing another book that I will be talking about again in that video. So many secrets, so much intrigue. But I do want to wrap this vlog up here because I have got so much going on for the rest of the day that I don't want to forget to wrap this vlog up. So thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below what you have been reading this week for the first week of Spoopathon. How did you do? How are you doing with your Spoopathon goals so far? You can also subscribe to see more of my face on your feed, and link down below you will find my online shop and also my Patreon, where I do lots of extra content. Thank you so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive.